Have you ever felt like you're stuck at a certain level of income and success in your business? Maybe you're stuck making a certain amount of money or working with a certain type of client or having a certain level of success. And for one reason or another, you just can't break through to the next threshold. Well, you're not alone. And the idea is really, really simple. Okay. So we all have these inner thermostats, and we all have an inner thermostat for the amount of money or success that we feel like we should earn or that we should have. And what happens is when we make less than that number, we tend to scramble to earn more to reach that standard that we've set for ourselves. But what also happens is when we end up making more than that number or have the possibility of making more than that number, we often self-sabotage or take our foot off the gas. And this manifests itself as entrepreneurs getting stuck at a certain level of income for years. And this may sound like, yeah, okay, whatever, dude. I've seen it happen time and time again. I've worked with hundreds of entrepreneurs, and this is actually extremely common. Okay, so for example, this is from one of my clients. He actually went and he looked back at his best months over the period of 5 years. And what he discovered was all of his best months over that 5-year period were all within $1,000 of each other. They never made any more than that ceiling, despite very different circumstances over that 5 years. Okay. And then another client that I had shared that when he was freelancing, they set a target of $2,500 per month. Like that was the amount that they should be making. And when they averaged their income over the past several years, it equaled almost exactly that amount. And there was no plan to do that. Right. And I've experienced it as well. I've also experienced this firsthand. So when I shut down my design agency, it was making $500,000 a year. And ironically, I started a new business, and my next business iteration made almost exactly the same amount of money in its first year. So I went from one business over to a completely different business, and shockingly was stuck at that same number. Okay. So how do you know if your money or your success thermostat is stuck? Well, there's a really easy telltale sign. So you can ask yourself this. If you've been earning basically the same amount of money for more than 2 to 3 years in a row, it is very possible that your internal thermostat is stuck, because as entrepreneurs, you should probably expect to earn more money as your business grows over time, right? You get better at what you do. You get better clients, you learn more, you have more experience. Sure, there'll be fluctuations, but the general trend should be that you're going up and to the right. I mean, that's one of the reasons we're in business, right? Okay, but before we get too into this, I want to be really clear about this idea of the inner thermostat. It is not just about money. I'm going to use money and success as an example a lot in this video, but you need to understand that this concept is much, much deeper than just money. So believe it or not, we actually have these inner thermostats for many areas in our lives. Think about the inner thermostat that you have for the amount of love in your life, or the amount of happiness, or the level of health, or success, or family, or creativity, or productivity, or self-worth, etc. Right? All of these different areas of our lives are all throttled, held back, or enabled by an internal thermostat. And a term that might make more sense for you is your standards, right? We all have standards for our health. You know, if you're like, well, I'm a person who runs 5 miles every week. When you tell yourself that story, that's your standard. And if you're not meeting that standard, you're going to bring yourself up to that level. But you're also not the person whose standard is, well, I run a marathon every week or whatever, right? Everyone has different standards for health, for success, and for our relationships. And what we see happen with this thermostat, right, is when things are below our standards, we quickly right the ship and get back to the level, okay? And if we feel like things are too good or too above our standards, what actually happens is we subtly sabotage things to bring us back down to our level of comfort. And just like our physical thermostats regulate temperature, our internal thermostats regulate our experience of our life. But the good news is, like your thermostat in the room that you're probably in right now, it can be adjusted. But the bad news is you can't adjust it in the way you would like to, okay? Because your internal thermostat is controlled from the inside. And I love this quote. It's a great book. It's called The 6 Pillars of Self-Esteem. It's by this guy named Nathaniel Branden. And in the book, he says, the tragedy of many people's lives is that they look for self-esteem in every direction except within, and so they fail in their search. And the big mistake that people make over and over and over again when they are trying to raise their standards or they're trying to raise their internal thermostat is that they think that there's something outside them that's going to magically raise that thermostat, right? So when we talk about money as an example, right, or a level of success, most people, when I talk to clients, they think, oh, okay, well, the reason that I just need more money, right? The solution to this problem is I need more money. But trust me, it's not. At the risk of stating the obvious, you cannot control your internal thermostat from the outside. But most people say, oh, well, if I just made enough money, then I'd feel like I deserve it, and then I would raise my standards. But I'll give you some examples so that you can really wrap your brain around this. Making more money alone is not going to raise your standards, not raise your internal thermostat of money. So here are some examples. Maybe this will help you wrap your brain around this. So what's an example of someone who maybe didn't have a ton of money and all of a sudden got a bunch of money? Did they then step into that role of success and abundance and wealth? Well, there's no perfect example than lottery winners. And of course, we hear over and over again how lottery winners often go broke within a few years. And ultimately, winning that money doesn't make them happier in the long run. So often we say, well, if I just had money, I'd be happier. Well, if you look at lottery winners, I mean, there's been a ton of research on them. This is from an article on ideafit.com. And they say, although a lottery win can create great elation for a while, the winner's sense of overall well-being eventually returns to its former level, the thermostat, right? Whether the person was previously happy or unhappy. And in fact, a significant number of lottery winners lose their winnings within 5 years, returning to the set temperature on their success thermostat. So when my clients come to me and they say, Rich, listen, I've got a problem. And the problem is I just don't have enough money. Okay. Raising your success thermostat is not going to be solved by getting a random windfall of money, right? You need to be able to bring it up internally. Here's another great example. Okay. Celebrities. It doesn't take too much effort to think of examples of celebrities or artists or musicians who reach that pinnacle of success, right? Only to self-sabotage and bring it all back down. And in the same book, the Self-Esteem book from Nathaniel Branden, he says, people sabotage themselves at the height of their success all the time. They do so when the success clashes with their implicit beliefs about what is appropriate to them. It is frightening to be flung beyond the limits of one's idea of who one is. And if a self-concept cannot accommodate a given level of success, and if the self-concept does not change, it is predictable that the person will find ways to self-sabotage. Because at the end of the day, success is not going to fix you. Money is not going to fix you internally. External validation is not going to fix the feeling that you have inside. Success is not going to erase your insecurities. If anything, it will amplify them, right? If all of a sudden the spotlight is on you and the camera's on you and you're in the public eye, you're not going to all of a sudden feel like you have no insecurities. You're going to feel like, oh my gosh, like it's magnified times 100, which is why so many people implode after achieving that great success, right? Because they're not prepared for what success unlocks in them. Those old wounds, those childhood scripts, those questions about self-worth, and deep reckoning with your identity. So when I tell you that your internal thermostat is controlled from the inside, what I'm really trying to say is you can't rely on the outside world to magically make that happen. And success can bring all this stuff to the surface because it forces you to confront what you have been avoiding the whole time. And when we get that success or that money or that recognition that is beyond our conception of self, there is cognitive dissonance that occurs. It's this inner conflict between what is happening externally and our internal self-image or beliefs. And as humans, for better or for worse, what we tend to do is we strive for congruence, right, or equality between our internal state and our external world. And when our reality doesn't reflect that internal image, often, for better or for worse, we will consciously or subconsciously find a way to modify our reality to reflect it. Okay. And when we have these thermostats, whether it's for money or for love or for health, any of these reasons, we're sitting wherever we are. Wherever you are currently is what your thermostat is set at. Okay. And there are two fears that exist on either side of you. There is the fear that comes when things get too low, okay, where they don't meet our standards. And then there's the fear that comes when we exceed our standards. So on the side that's lower, there is the fear of failure. And that is basically what motivates us to keep our standards. And then on the other side, it's the fear of success that stops us from exceeding them. So the fear of failure, we'll talk about that, and then we'll talk about the fear of success. Most people tend to use this fear of failure as their main driving fuel. It's actually extremely powerful fuel. I would argue that most of our world has been built based on fear. There's a lot of love in the world as well, but if you just look around, fear is a fuel for many. And in a lot of ways, our economy right now and the way the world is set up is designed to prey on people's fear of poverty, of going hungry, of destitution, of not having enough. And as a result, we really force people to take action and to drive and to generate. Okay. And this fear of failure is a powerful fuel. If we secretly fear that we're not going to be taken care of, the only way forward is to try to take care of ourselves and to constantly kick things into high gear. And I see this constantly with my clients. Maybe you've experienced this as well. When we start making less money than we feel like we should. So let's say all of a sudden we're used to making a certain amount of money, and then we lose a couple of clients, and then, oh my gosh, how am I going to pay the mortgage this month? How am I going to pay for my kid's school? Whatever it is. When that happens and we're making less money than we believe that we should, then our internal conception is we tend to get creative, right? We kick things into high gear. We start solving problems. We create opportunities out of thin air, and we make it happen. And all of a sudden you wake up and you're like, okay, we're back. I can breathe. And that fear as fuel is a really powerful motivator. It actually works really well, unfortunately. And it's this fuel that drives us to act and create change in our lives. It wakes us up early. It keeps us up at night, and it makes sure we maintain our current standards. But the downside to using fear as fuel is it is a very dirty fuel. It's like, putting coal in your electric car or something like that. Maybe it'll run for a little bit, but it burns us up from the inside. It causes stress, it causes anxiety, it causes burnout. And like a car running on low quality gasoline, we may move forward, but there's a cost to our engine over time. So I'll talk a little bit about how we can harness this power, this drive that we have inside us without burning ourselves out in a bit. But you can see how the fear of failure is often what drives us to maintain our current standards. All right. Now I want to talk about why we don't go higher, because I am certain some of you, if you've stuck around this long, are listening to this and they're going to say, I would be fine with more money. If I doubled the amount of money that I made, everything would be totally good, and there's nothing inside me blocking that from happening. The only thing that's not right is that I don't have more money. Okay. And people will cop to being afraid of failure. But what's really going on is we are often really afraid of success. And that is really what paralyzes people from raising their standards, from raising their thermostat. And it's just not about money, right? It's about all of the areas of our lives where we have standards: health, family, love, creativity, abundance, whatever it is. Okay. The real fear that paralyzes people is success. And it's not so much the money or the attention or the bigger spotlight on them that freaks them out. It's actually the internal consequences of success the identity shifts, the psychological weight, the emotional exposure that trigger the resistance. And as a result, we sabotage our success for a variety of reasons. This may sound hard to believe, but I've just observed it enough, where like clients that I've worked with, I see that they have this path to grow, this path to like make success happen and raise the bar. And what they do is they subconsciously don't ever get there, right? They take their foot off the pedal, or they self-sabotage. One of the ways I see happen all the time is just with like shiny objects, okay? So they have this business that's doing great, and all they need to do is focus and double down and like pick one thing and just really stick with it. And as a result, they start a second business, or they think that they need another offer, or they need to work with a different type of client, or they need to start a podcast, whatever it is. And it's all of these subtle things that are subconsciously keeping us from the success that we say we want. And listen, all of these things are really internal, and they're based on these stories that we tell ourselves about how things are. I talked about in a previous podcast, Ramit Sethi, this author, calls them invisible scripts. And these are the unconscious beliefs about things like money, love, family, faith, success that silently govern our actions. And these stories are often transferred to us during childhood, right? They sometimes are passed down in the family, and we run them like a script, often without even realizing that they're there. So let me give you a couple examples, and maybe some of these will resonate with you, and you can see how insidious it is that, we're often our own worst enemy when it comes to raising our standards and adjusting our success thermostat. So the first one is this story that I get, like it's rational. And it's a story that people that are successful are evil or bad. And when you look at the people that society holds up as successful, it's pretty easy to see why people might subconsciously fear success. When you look at the top 1%, right? The celebrity billionaires, the exploitative CEOs, the shady marketing bro people, it's easy to think, well, if that's what success looks like, I'm good. I'm out. I don't want that. And our culture teaches us to associate success with corruption. Think about any movie, right? Hollywood conditions us. Success means greed, it means villainy, it means someone with no morals. And when your subconscious associates success with ego, with greed, or with disconnection, you are going to block it, period. You'll procrastinate, you'll undersell yourself, you'll self-sabotage. And that's the trap, because if the only models you're seeing of success are what are being portrayed in the media, what movies are showing you, and they look like people that you don't want to become, your identity is going to reject success at the root. And you may need to find out this for yourself. You're probably not going to believe it from me, but there are plenty of examples of people who are great stewards of success. And they use the impact that they have on the world to make the world a better place. And it doesn't corrupt them. But that's something you're probably going to need to work through, right? If you believe subconsciously that people that have money or people that have success are evil, it's going to be really difficult for you, even though you say you want to make more money and that would be helpful, to get there. Okay, so here's a second one. And it's this belief that change means pain. I know for me, I don't like change. And ultimately, growth and success means that things are going to change, right? If you want things to be exactly like they are now, don't expect the outcomes to be much more different. Because for better or for worse, having more success means you're going to have more responsibility in your life. And you have to ask yourself, am I ready to hold the level of responsibility that success demands? And if subconsciously we feel that change equals pain, we're going to avoid it. And big changes mean uncertainty. And if we're not ready for it, it's just going to manifest as procrastination, finding reasons why something isn't ready, or worrying about what will other people think? All these excuses, right, about how success is just going to equal pain. Okay. And here's another one. I'm not ready. And this is a really interesting flip. Because what is success really? Stick with me here. In a lot of ways, success is love in disguise. It's recognition, it's abundance, it's attention, it's support. And for many of us, if in the past you've been hurt or neglected or abandoned, you might unconsciously reject the thing that you say you want. Okay? And this is like, you got to stick with me on this one. Most people aren't afraid of achievement. They're afraid of letting good things into their life. And I know you may not believe me, but go talk to a therapist and they'll tell you the same thing that I'm telling you here. All right. So in all of these instances, right, this is where we are unable to raise our standards or to increase our success thermostat because subconsciously we keep bringing ourselves down to the level where we feel like we should be. And the good news is there are ways that you can get unstuck. There are ways that you can raise your standards. But this isn't going to be like one of my typical videos where I can give you the magic 5-step process and that will fix all of your internal issues and help you get unstuck. I believe that like the journey of the lifetime is the journey to raise our standards and evolve into who we're supposed to be, or just evolve into who we are over a lifetime. So I can't give you like a magic playbook. But what I can give you is some tips, some things that I've seen work, some lessons and some insights to help you get unstuck. So I have 7 of them. I'll break them down now. Okay, so the first one, and you've heard me talk about this before, the first step is always awareness. If this is the first time you're hearing this concept, it is probably going to take more than once or twice for it to sink in and for you to really understand and see how this applies to you and your life. But let's use the money thermostat as an example, okay? So we're just going to keep it really simple and just talk about the amount of money that you feel like you should earn. So how do you raise that thermostat? Before you do anything else, you need to become aware of where your current setting is. Because if you don't have awareness around this, it's going to be really hard to make anything happen. So you can ask yourself some questions. Ask yourself, what income level feels normal to me? Okay. How do I feel when things go below that level? How does it feel when like I'm not making enough money? What do I do when that happens? Okay. And then the flip side, how do you feel when things get too good? You might find yourself in a situation, just to give you an example, if you're an entrepreneur, like most of the people that watch this stuff, you have an amazing month, right? Like let's say you have a month where you make 3 times as much money as you normally do. What I usually see happen is people say, oh my gosh, this was amazing. This is so great. And they don't keep that momentum. 9 times out of 10, the following month, they go right back to where they normally are. Okay. Rather than asking themselves, well, if I can do this, I can sustain this, right? What do I need to do? What created the conditions for me to have this 3x month? And how can I keep that going? Instead, they say, that was awesome. Hope that happens again, and come right back down to the same level. Okay. Whereas if we had a negative 3x month, we're probably going to be moving with some more purpose to raise the level back up. Okay. So asking yourself, how do I feel when things get too good, is also important. You probably take your foot off the gas. And then the last question I'll have for you is, often we have this voice in the back of our head that speaks to like our best self. And there are these things that we know I should be doing, but I'm avoiding because I'm scared of them, right? Probably because you're scared of success. What are those things that you know you should be doing and you're avoiding? And then ask yourself, why am I not doing it? And then that's going to get you down a path towards some of these root causes. Some things that have been helpful for me, deep work going into journaling. Highly recommend morning pages for kind of digging up those subconscious things. Therapy. I've been doing internal family systems therapy, which is super helpful with this, because what you'll realize when you do this type of work is we have these different I don't want to say people inside of us, but these voices inside of us, these parts of ourselves that have different stories and different perspectives and motivate us and kind of like hijack how we show up in the world. And if you don't have the awareness of what these parts are and the roles that they play, and how they exist to protect us, it's going to be really hard to level up here. Okay. The other thing that I will recommend is, no matter what you're trying to level up, if you're trying to level up your health, right, your fitness, it helps to surround yourself with others who are where you want to go. Okay. So you can start to see, okay, well, how do they show up? How do they talk to themselves? Like what are the actions that are taking place so that you can learn? Same thing like on the money or financial side. Like who are you spending your time with? Are you spending time with people that you aspire to be like? Or are you spending time with people that maybe are, I don't want to say bringing you down, but maybe not where you want to be? Okay. Alrighty. The second one, and this goes back to this point that I like really need to hammer home. You will not solve this internal shift externally. And the first trick our mind is going to tell us when we hear this stuff is, I just need more information. Okay. Like when clients come to me, the first thing that I hear, if they're like, hey, listen, I'm like trying to double my business, is they feel like they have some magic missing information, right? I just don't know how to do X. Well, if I could just do X, Y, and Z, then I would make more money. And here's the thing. That may or may not be true. You may need information, okay? But the information is not what's stopping you from going to the next level, okay? And this is a subtle difference here. There is like an internal block that's going on, because if you weren't internally blocked, you would just go solve the problem. The same way where when we're not at our standards, all of a sudden we bring all of our creativity to the forefront. Like let's say if, my business went down the tubes and I had to figure out how to like raise up my money to this level again. I'm certain that I could do it, right? Because, when we're motivated, and sometimes we use that fear as the motivation, which is not the best fuel, we are able to go solve that problem. So I always tell people, listen, like I have information and I'm happy to share it with you. But what happens when you get the information and then nothing changes? Okay. That's when we realize, okay, the internal thermostat is in fact controlled from the inside and not the outside. All right. Next one. This is a big one. Stop using fear as fuel. Okay. You need to pick up a new fuel, a fuel that is more clean than fear. And this is a tricky shift, but it's an important one. It's something that I still struggle with. It's really easy to fall back into this habit. So we're looking for like progress, not perfection here. But we have this capacity to act and to be motivated at all times, right? We just need to harness it. It's like I said, just in that previous example, if all of a sudden my business decreased by 80%, I would come up with creative solutions to solve that problem. And the only reason I'm able to activate that so quickly is because of that fear of failure. But we don't need to use fear as a motivator to grow. And I'm not like recording any of this to just give people advice. Like I really teach what I most need to learn. So like I'm always thinking about this type of stuff for me. And you need to ask yourself, okay, well, when fear is motivating me, when like, let's say you have a deadline or something, right? And you're able to get it in gear, you need to ask yourself, why do I need that dirty fuel in order to act? And if you can find a fuel that's greater, you'll find that you can act with a lot less friction, and you'll find that you really have much more energy, and much more lightness. I could record a whole video on this topic, but it's something worth paying attention to. Alrighty. This next one is about being willing to let changes and success in. Because the real secret is that success is not just something that you achieve, right? It's something that you allow. It requires a capacity, an openness, and a willingness to actually let good things happen. And like, sorry, this is getting weird, but many people's nervous systems are not wired for good things to happen. Okay? If your default mode is, I have to earn everything, or it doesn't count, or I have to work really hard, or otherwise I'm not going to make money. Subconsciously, you're going to create resistance to anything that feels easy or abundant or unearned. And one of the most important lessons that I learned working with one of my buddies, Blake LaGrange, is this idea that like our highest value, our true value, is when we're doing the things that are so easy and so natural to us that it doesn't even feel like work. It's just the stuff that we can just spout off. Like it's so easy to do, we almost feel like we shouldn't even charge for it because it's so natural. And that's actually where the value is. And if your default mode is, I just need to work really hard, it needs to be painful, it needs to hurt, you are creating resistance to the thing that feels the easiest, right? And that is what creates the most value for the world, right? And as a result, you're not going to let the good in, even when it's right here. All right. The next one, I think this is just an important distinction. I kind of touched on it earlier. One of the biggest fears that I hear when people talk about the fear of success is that success is going to change me. And the secret is that success doesn't change people. It reveals them for who they really are. And that's a hard pill to swallow. Success means change. It means that, reset that. Success doesn't change people. It reveals them. And we fear that success is going to mean change. Fear that the change will turn us into someone we don't want to become. Okay? In reality, what's happening is success is changing the world around us, right? It's changing the external, but we stay grounded in the person that we are. And as a result, when the spotlight is on us and there's more abundance and there's more responsibility, our internal convictions and like our self-worth is tested. It's really easy to like keep yourself at a low level and not really challenge yourself because you won't have to show the world who you really are. And a lot of times success reveals the person that they really are. So when you see society's examples of success, for instance, just open up the news and look at whoever's on the cover of the news. I don't believe that success makes people into this person. It reveals what's there, and we have these capacities as humans to like lean into our dark self or our good self. And if you don't do the work to like cultivate the goodness inside of you, this guy sounds so weird. Success is gonna only make it worse. Okay. All right, this one is also really powerful, and it's why the deep healing is so important. I recommend working through a lot of these blocks. Like I think part of the entrepreneur toolkit, and I have a lot of conviction around this, should include a therapist. Because so many of the things, like once all the tactical, practical stuff is sorted, like business is actually pretty simple. Like there are a variety of levers that you can pull in order to be good at entrepreneurship. And they're all skills that you can learn and things that you can up level at. But once all the levels are up to a certain standard, all that's left is you. And if we don't work on our internal state, it's going to be really difficult to do anything else. And if your nervous system doesn't feel safe with success, success is going to feel really dangerous because like success, growth, it tends to bring visibility. It tends to bring more recognition, tends to bring more responsibility. And these can feel extremely unsafe if your life experience tells you that attention on you, focus equals danger. Like a lot of times, like maybe as a kid, you were criticized for being too much. Maybe you heard that like love from your parents was conditional on you doing a good job. Or maybe you learned to survive by kind of shrinking or staying quiet or unnoticed. It's going to be really hard to grow and to like raise your level if subconsciously you feel like this is going to be dangerous. So maybe the question more is not like, are you afraid of success? But are you afraid of being seen? Or are you afraid of love? Because at its core, and I think this is the most important point, like I talk a lot about money because people are interested in money. And it's such a good proxy for basically everything that we really want in life. It's an entry point. But at its core, like success isn't about money. It's about connection, right? It's about impact. It's about being seen by others, right? Being chosen, being received, being celebrated. And for many people, that's what actually terrifies them. It's not the results, it's the intimacy. Like money is just a tool, and it's a tool that we can use to amplify the best things about us or the worst things about us. It in and of itself is neutral, and we infuse meaning onto it. Okay, last thing that I'll say, and then we'll wrap this up here. We grow from the inside out. And this just goes back to what I'm saying about the internal thermostat being controlled from the inside. The mistake that we will make is we will try to achieve success externally first through material possessions, right? You see the person with the Lambo and the Rolex and the big house and whatever. And they secretly believe, and we're all guilty of this to a certain extent, myself included, that if I can just fix my outsides, my broken insides will magically follow. And I can tell you in the long term, it never works, right? We go back to the lottery example from before, or the celebrities or the people that find great success and self-destruct because their beliefs about themselves didn't catch up. So I didn't really expect to end up here, but I guess it's kind of obvious that I did. If you want to make more money, the biggest lever that you can pull, and if you want to raise your standards across the board, success, health, love, friendship, creativity, fulfillment, abundance, whatever you want to call it, it starts from the inside out. That the biggest lever for most entrepreneurs is to do the internal work. And what happens is, once you solve these internal blockages, you'll see the external shifts take place. You'll start taking the actions that lead to the outcomes you want. Whereas before, right, we have that list of things. Oh, I know I should do this. Oh, I know I should eat better. Oh, I know I should like exercise more or go to the gym. Oh, I know I should do like more outreach to clients. Oh, I know I should get better at sales. Like, whatever it is. Once you solve the internal stuff, you'll see the external shifts take place. You'll start taking the actions that lead to the outcomes that you want. And I'm going to leave you with this quote. And I think this is a good place to leave off. Hopefully this was helpful. If you want to work together on this stuff, there's a link below. We can talk about that. But I'll leave you with this, okay? At the end of the day, you'll finally realize this. This is a quote from Richard Bach. The book's called The Messiah's Handbook, Reminders for the Advanced Soul. He says, "You wait a lifetime to meet someone who understands you, accepts you as you are, and at the end, you find that someone all along has been you."